Hello everyone, it's Alex Radical from Board Game Co. And today with me I have a guest. More specifically, it's going to be Joseph from Board Games with Niramas. And his channel, I'll make sure to link down below. It focuses mainly on playthroughs and whatnot. You do a lot of like One Night Ultimate Werewolf content as well or stuff like that, right?
Yeah, that's true. Well, it's actually the Ultimate Werewolf. So it's like the
Ultimate
long
Werewolf,
games.
sorry.
I
Yes,
do
oh my
like
bad.
really
I
long
I
videos.
play One Night Ultimate Werewolf, so I confuse the two.
Oh yeah. The one night is fun as well, but I tend to like these like 2 hour games with a lot of people and these days of course we do them on Zoom. We have a lot of fun with that. I have a really like tight community group basically that the Dice Tower
Yes.
started and
Yeah.
there's a bunch of different people in there.
Awesome. And the way we actually, I think the first, met was playing a social deduction game of Feed the Kraken on an online play. So I guess I am familiar with
Yeah.
that to a degree. But that's more of an aside. Again, make sure to check out his channel. I'll throw a link down below. But today, more specifically, what we are doing is we are covering a list of the top 5 each, the top 5 video games we want to see made into board games. What games we just think they're solid video games. We love them, we don't love them, we hate them. I assume we love them. I don't know about your list, but I love all 5 of these, and why we want to see them made into a board game, and whatever information we want to contribute to the conversation past the general desire to see a video game made out of the board game. And this topic is so fascinating to begin with because since we decided we were going to do this topic, they already have announced multiple video games that are coming out as board games. It seems to be more and more a trend of just turning. Like, I don't know what it is about the spaces overlapping, but more and more people are seeing that there's multi-million-dollar Kickstarters if you take the right IP, find the right company, and turn it into a board game. Which means all of these are no longer just wish lists of things that will never come to pass, but they're in fact research for companies who want to find out what the two of us at least will end up buying.
Yeah, and you just look at the Stardew Valley
Yes.
board game that was just released super hype. And I actually discovered the PC game this way. So I started playing the PC game because I can't get hold of the board game yet in Europe.
Yeah.
So that was kind of interesting that it and it's interesting because there's like a bunch of these games out there that I haven't really heard of
Yeah.
or tried because I'm not really keeping up with the whole digital game scene these days.
Yeah.
So it's kind of fascinating when I see like, oh wow, here's a game that everybody loves, and I never heard about it.
And like Stellaris, we have Stellaris on Kickstarter now with $2 million raised in like a day, basically 2 days, whatever it was. It really is insane to see. We had Darkest Dungeon was Mythic Games, I think their highest Kickstarter ever with $5.5 million. It's something we're going to see more and more, and we have some coming up. But all that is really more of an introduction to the fact that why don't you go first? What is your number one? What's your first game on this list?
All right, so my number 5 basically
5.
is
Yeah.
old classic, of course, Super Mario Bros. I'm surprised that we don't really already have a good Super Mario Bros. Game out there.
Okay.
I've been trying to research this a little bit. Like, there's games that reminds you of the same, like, structure where you like have a 2D scroller and you're facing obstacles. My own game that I designed, I haven't been released yet, but like Draco's Adventures, it's called.
Okay.
In that one, you're also like scrolling basically from left to right, and you're like jumping over obstacles and so on. But I would like to see a pure Super Mario Bros. Game where you go up in like levels and they have different themes and you're pretty much a racing game. I think would be the best sort of mechanic for this, or the structure for it, where you're like racing to get to the flag at the end.
Gotcha.
So that could, I could imagine this being like a bunch of people. It could be like different characters. You could be like Yoshi or Luigi or Mario and the princess and so on.
So
I think that could be a good like kids game, family game.
it's interesting.
So
Are you familiar with Tiny Turbo Cars?
no,
So
is that a game that I have missed?
no, well,
Similar?
sort of missed. It was only just on Kickstarter just recently. It literally ended like a week and a half ago or something like that. But it
Oh
is.
yeah, I think I
Yeah, that one, I actually had a chance to play it online, and it actually literally gives you a controller in terms of the way you control your pieces. So that is one that I think I could very much see them. I mean, obviously it's made and it's too late now, but I think that would have been a great implementation of a racing game that they could have tweaked some things, added some characters, and really made a solid game in the vein of Super Mario Bros. It would have probably required some tweaks in terms of really delivering on that theme, and those are tweaks so just some background for myself. I played a lot of video games growing up, but I was always PC based, at least growing up. I never really touched PlayStation or Xbox until way down the road. So I've actually never played any of the Super Mario Brothers games at all.
Yeah.
None of the racing games, none of the side scrolling platforms. I may have touched them occasionally with like a friend's controller or something, but barely ever really delved into those games, and so I know about them, but I'm ignorant of the actual gameplay. Or I mean, again, I know the
All
high
right,
level
yeah.
gameplay. I never actually played them.
But maybe I'm a little bit older than you are. I don't know. But like I grew up with this whole like basically Nintendo
Yeah.
and then Super Nintendo and all that all up to PlayStation and then PC games on top of that as well. So
Yeah, so in
there's
this
been a
case,
lot of
I
games.
don't think it's so much an age thing, so much as we just didn't grow up with any systems outside PC. We just had PC games growing up. We
Okay,
didn't we didn't really
yeah.
get into any like at least again growing up alone. We just never got any other system, never platforms, no handhelds. We just had PC and PC only. But yeah,
All right, yeah.
cool,
Well,
very good.
that's my number five.
Uh,
In some way, I would like to see that implemented.
Excellent. So my number five is going to be specifically a game that, and the reason this one's my number five is because not because it's my least favorite video game, but in fact, arguably it might be one of my favorites from these. But it is because I just don't see it being done well, and that's going to be Overwatch. Overwatch is going to be a first-person shooter. For those who aren't aware of it, a first-person shooter with like kind of individual characters that, I mean, even looking at the screen now that I'm looking at, I wonder which of these characters are new because I have not played this game in probably going on a year and a half, but I played this a lot when it first came out. I was a huge fan of the game, the system, the balance of the first person shooter plus tactics and abilities and all these different ways you can play the game. I loved it. I played it a ton, and I would love to see a board game made out of it, but at the same time, I'm skeptical it would be done well. And for me, for my list, what I actually did is I actually chose different companies that I would want to see each of the game. I paired up each game I want to see made along with the company I want to see making it. And for Overwatch, I chose Mythic Games. Speaking of Darkest Dungeon and whatnot,
Yeah.
that I think they just actually announced Rainbow Six Siege, I believe it was. They announced a board game for that coming. So if they think they can pull off a first person shooter there, I'd love to see it done for Overwatch. I don't have any confidence that it'll be done well, but taking one of my favorite video games that I played, probably the game I played the most in the past 5 years in terms of video games, and then turning that into actual board game would be amazing. Have you ever played Overwatch?
Yeah. I haven't. It's the basically only Blizzard game I haven't played. I think
Oh,
I played
nice.
everything after. But has there been any good board game first-person shooter done?
I'm
Like,
gonna say no. That's why this is my number five. I don't think any
yeah,
first-person shooter. Have there? Let's start with. Let's take a step back. Have there been any first-person shooters, good or not, that have been done?
this one. What is that called? There's one where I haven't played it, but it's been like,
Adrenaline.
yeah, Adrenaline.
So
Yeah,
Adrenaline it has the theme of a first-person shooter, but the
yeah.
gameplay is so far removed. The gameplay is pure area control. There's no real intricacies or attachment to a first-person shooter in the way the game actually plays. But I'm trying to think of like, I mean, they also just had Reload on Kickstarter, which tries to mimic a bit of a battle royale style game. But I didn't even know how you would properly implement a first-person shooter. Now, to Overwatch's credit, the reason I picked Overwatch and ignored a lot of others is because the fact that they have so many different abilities means I could see them implementing it in a way that focuses far more on the combinations and interplay of abilities over the first-person shooter aspect. Meaning,
Yeah,
one of the pros of
yeah.
Overwatch is the fact that you could be someone who can't aim at all and just pick a character that doesn't involve aiming. And so the fact that the video
Okay, yeah,
game
yeah.
relies on being able to accommodate a lack of utilizing aiming at all makes me think the board game could do the same. Like you could have the character who, throws his hook out and pulls someone in. You could have, well, the archer is aiming. I'm trying to think of other characters, but like you could have Junkrat with his throwing his bombs all over the place. There's ways I think you could implement it that don't rely on aiming or that convert traditional aimed characters into, well, a different type of character that works for the board game. But again, low expectations, which is why it's my number five.
Yeah, and I think it's as you say because like a big part of first-person shooters. Like I played a lot of Battlefield in my days,
Yep.
but like I can't put it. I can't imagine a board game working that way because it's a lot about reaction speed and assessment of like. It's hard to imagine how to implement that. That would make it feel the same way. I don't think it's possible, really.
I absolutely agree. So, what is your number four?
Yeah, my number four is Don't Starve, which is I think less known. I think it's more of an independent based board game for Steam, and this is a survival game with a lot of interesting twists. So basically, it's a third-person perspective. So you see a little guy running around, and then there's kind of monsters and stuff happening, and it's really, really hard. The PC
Gotcha.
game, at least at the beginning. Um, and I think this could be implemented. It looks kind of similar actually to Stardew Valley, the PC game.
Interesting.
But this is of course more survival and but it's a lot of crafting and exploration, fighting. You have to eat, you have to survive. And for a board game, I'm thinking something along the lines of a co-op, maybe like a solo game slash co-op,
Okay.
uh, with events happening. I mean, it's sort of this could almost be a card game with the theme basically. So it's
Sure.
a or something like along the lines of like Seven Continent if you want to go into larger game. But still, I still think the main concept here would be like the survival aspect because that's where the PC game shines, where you really feel the pressure. You're like, I'm going to starve, basically. That's why the game is called
Interesting.
Don't Starve.
Yeah, so I've
It's
heard
hard
of
to
this
like,
one. I haven't had an opportunity to play this one. What platform is it on?
it's PC. I
Okay.
think maybe PlayStation and so on. I don't know. I just played it on PC and it's also has well, it's I don't know if it's a separate game, but they released like Don't Starve Together, which was a co-op
Interesting.
where you're playing together. It's really cool how it's kind of horror themed in a sense,
Sure.
but it's all like cartoonish style horror. Um, there's like events happening every so many days. There's like these wild dogs attacking your camp, and you have to build up defenses and have different kind of weapons and so on. You can build like labyrinths and stuff to get them cornered, and yeah,
Yeah, I'm looking at some of the images from this. It looks interesting. I mean, I'm not really. This is more of a survival-based video game, right?
yeah. It's
Interesting.
all about survival. Then there's some like adventure style, and you explore caves and dungeons and find new items. But it's all about the theme or the atmosphere in the game is really strong. Like it's really like spooky, dark
Yeah,
style,
I'm looking at a
and
screenshot of someone standing in the forest watching the whole thing burn around them.
yeah.
Cool. Very cool. So, very good. My number 4 is going to be Dragon Age. Have you ever played Dragon Age? Any of them?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I played all of them, I think.
Oh, so I actually have not played Dragon Age in quite some time. I played the original, I played the sequel. I don't believe I've played Inquisition. Is that the most recent? I don't even know what the most recent is at this point. Or is it
Oh
Dragon
yeah,
Age 2? I don't know. I have no idea. I'm not up to date on the series at all. But
yeah,
Dragon Age was to me one of the best video games, the best RPG style games that I have ever played. It had a world that was only really rivaled to me with Mass Effect and Dragon Age in terms of the games that they were doing. And I almost chose Mass Effect, but Mass Effect I think ultimately to a certain extent was done with ISS Vanguard. While a different actual game, they carries very much the same gameplay feel. If I want to feel like I'm playing Mass Effect, ISS Vanguard does that
yeah.
already. So for me, I want Dragon Age now. I want that mythical fantasy setting. I want that character leveling up, the development, the story, the narrative, the everything combined into a system that would be amazing. And for this game, I actually picked for the publisher that I chose for this one. I debated picking who did what's it called? I debated picking Awakened Realms because they did ISS Vanguard, but I actually ended up going with Dragori Games. Dragori Games who did Arena of the Contest,
Okay.
and I figured that they could probably pull this off. They've done cooperative, they've done fantasy, they've done dragons, and I'd love to see them somehow tackle this IP, bring it to the table. They're familiar with Kickstarter. If Dragon Age is looking to launch a $6.5 million Kickstarter, they should team up with Dragori Games and bring this one to the table. I think it can be amazing. It's one of my favorite games, fond
Mhm.
memories, and even just talking about it has me wanting to dive back into whatever the most recent implementation of the game is.
It's been a while. It's been a while since I played. I remember, I especially remember the story being really good. It's like the Templars and the I played this like mage, I think,
Yeah,
and like magic was banned and so on. Yeah, it's really cool.
it's really solidly done. I really miss it. I want to dive back into it. I shouldn't have done this video. It's gonna have me wanting to explore a variety of video games that I have moved on from just through lack of time.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's the problem. Like I have like two different Mass Effect games for my PlayStation, and I
Mm,
haven't even started any of them
yeah,
because like time.
it's the problem. So, what's your number 3?
All right, my number three is again old classic Zelda. I would like to see a Zelda board game, and again, I'm surprised that this hasn't been done already because it's such a strong IP. You could sell this like if you do that the Kickstarter, you know, you could. Yeah, I don't know. I think I'd probably be right and Nintendo and everything.
Yeah.
But
Has
and I'm not really sure how this game would
Mhm.
work. I'm thinking some kind of dungeon crawl in a sense, but with a like focus on exploration, adventure style more than the fighting, maybe.
So
If it's
this
gonna
is
stick
where
with the theme.
my ignorance comes into play. But Nintendo, are they? Is Mortal Kombat from Nintendo? Is Street Fighter from Nintendo?
I well, I think it's Capcom maybe, but I
Capcom.
think
It's Capcom. Never mind.
yeah,
You're right. Yeah,
yeah,
because I know Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter both have video games. I mean, both have board games or a board
yeah,
game and an upcoming board game. And so to that extent, they're already familiar with the concept of branching off into board games, which would make this more likely. But I don't know if
yeah.
Nintendo has any board games then.
I don't know. They did a Monopoly,
That doesn't
like
count.
Mario Kart
That's
Monopoly. That's I think
no,
that's
yeah.
like the extent of it. I don't think they've done any board games,
Because
Nintendo.
this is one of those
Uh,
weird conversations around the general concept in general, which is you have Darkest Dungeon, $5.5 million in Kickstarter. You have Stellaris launching day one with 2 million, but
yeah,
with a large enough board game, sorry, with a large enough video game, $5.5 million is pennies. It's nothing to them potentially, depending on just how large they are. And so it's always a
yeah,
fascinating conversation of, well, on the one hand, you can launch a $5-10 million Kickstarter if you do it right. You have the right audience. On the other hand, that just might not be the level of return you're looking for to branch out on your IP. But
yeah.
I mean, I never actually played. This goes back to again my Nintendo conversation again, my Super Mario Brothers conversation again. I never played Legend of Zelda. Always been interested in it. I debated getting the Twitch recently. The handheld, the newest. Is it the Twitch? No, it's called the
Switch.
Switch. The Switch. You see, I'm
Yeah,
totally ignorant.
yeah.
So I debated getting the Switch like maybe a year ago or so just to try it out. But I just said I have too many board games I need to
I
play,
mean,
so I didn't. But
yeah. I mean, this is like some of my best childhood memories is from like Zelda 3 and so on. But also, the latest one for the Switch, I haven't played. I don't have a Switch.
yeah.
I have friends who played and say that it's like the best one in the series.
Yeah,
That
it
says
looked
a lot.
cool. Like when I was looking
Uh,
into the various options I can get for the Switch, there were actually a few that really called to me. One was going to be Mario Kart Racing, or Mario Kart World, or whatever it's called. Then we had the Zelda game, and there were like a few others that really looked like they would be fun games to dive into. So eventually, maybe one day I'll get the Switch. Just haven't got into it yet.
yeah, well, I want the theme and I love the theme of the Zelda. Like, there's a lot of like story and like a world, basically a mythical world around it. So that I
Hmm.
mean, then implementing it in some kind of board game. So again, I think this would be something along the lines of maybe like I don't know, like Tainted Grail, basically, but with
Interesting.
that theme instead. It's way more like cartoony, light. It's a lighter theme, of course, and it's more about it's less about the combat. It's more about the exploration and um, well, there's like of course combat and it's like boss fights and all that. That's really cool.
Cool.
So yeah, that's my number three.
Very good. So for my number three is going to be Portal 2, or Portal in general. Portal 2, I don't really care about one versus the other. Portal is going to be a puzzly style game for those who haven't played it. It's a game where you have a portal gun that creates portals, and you shoot a portal here, you shoot a portal there, and then you figure out what puzzle system you need to solve, involving moving cubes or moving yourself, or figuring out how to get from point A to point B in progressively more and more complex manners as you go through the game. Portal was amazing. Portal 2 was amazing. I loved the system of the game. It was so solidly done in the puzzle that it developed as you continue to play through it. And for the publisher that I picked for this one, I'd love to see Orange Nebula tackle this game. I'd love to see Orange Nebula, who brought Vindication and Unsettled. I think they have such a interesting take on the world and the puzzle of Vindication. I think they could potentially take this IP and do a solid job with it as it plays out. But that's basically my number three, Portal.
All right. Yeah, that's a game that I haven't really played. I
Hmm.
played it like I tried it out, but um, I don't think it's really my style of game when it comes to computer games. I haven't played it much, so.
Cool. Very good.
Right, my number two is the game. This is a bit, I don't know, this is cheating a little bit because basically this is a game that I spent the most time in my life playing, and that is World of Warcraft. And there is a World of Warcraft board game already.
There's a
It's just
few
that,
actually. I don't know if they count in that
yeah,
sense.
it's just that it's not like like I want it, basically,
Hmm.
um, because, or it could be just Warcraft, I guess. But I don't want a like 4X game or like fighting each
Gotcha.
other. I'm more interested in having in the like the big thing for me with World of Warcraft was never the PvP. It was more like the exploration and the character development, like leveling up, getting new skills, finding new items, building like these raids you did
Hmm.
with like bunch of back in the days we were like 40 people going into a dungeon for hours and hours and just like trying to find the better gear. This multi online game that was so cool back in the
Yeah.
days, like and these what I would like to see in a board game is something definitely a co-op game where you like basically I'm thinking a bit like sort of Gloomhaven-ish, even though I wouldn't want the same mechanic maybe, but same
Sure.
kind of thought or like a super campaign that you're like playing together and you're going deeper and deeper, finding new sort of gear and somehow some kind of open world as well. It's hard to translate, of course, into a board game
Yeah.
because it's one of these games that takes forever. Like, I mean, you could play it for like years.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't
I
really
almost
work. Yeah.
included Guild Wars. You familiar with Guild Wars at all?
Yeah.
So I almost included Guild Wars, and I was like, it's just the depth I want from Guild Wars, I would never want to see into a board game. Anything they do would butcher it, and so I ended up leaving off my list for that reason. But yeah, it's a cool concept.
Maybe like basically what I do a lot these days, especially, is play like co-op games as solo games. Like I play Gloomhaven solo and so on. And I mean, I could spend 100 hours in a World of Warcraft or a Warcraft style Gloomhaven for sure. That would be awesome. So, and
Cool.
again, that could be a huge Kickstarter. I mean, Blizzard
It would
has
be
the IP, and
absolutely
yeah,
huge. I mean, these that's the thing. But again, huge is relative. For Kickstarter, it could possibly cross 10 million. If done well with the right crossover, the right audience, maybe it
yeah,
unseats Gloomhaven as Frosthaven as the highest Kickstarter ever. But
yeah.
also, $13 million is pennies in terms of the grand
Oh
scheme of
yeah, for
things with
Blizzard,
this.
it's not that much. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, that's true.
Then again, I want Overwatch, the same exact problem there. Okay, my number two is going to be God of War, and this is where I branch away from PC games into. I think this is my first non-PC game, but this is going to be God of War on PlayStation, and this is one that I wanted to see. I want to see it done into a board game so much that I literally have a partially written rule set of how I want it to be
Oh wow.
presented. Yeah, I did this a while ago. I have a few sets of rules that I've written over the years, and never really got further than writing the rules because the second part takes a lot more work of playtesting, developing, and all of that. But God of War is one that I would say I even have hope to see it made into a board game. And my vision for it is a bit of a in God of War in the video game. It's all about it's a variety of things going on, but the most recent one, a lot is going to be daisy chaining your combos as you level up, unlock different ways to fight or to progress in the game, some degree of puzzles and interaction as well as you go through it, but ultimately about taking down huge monsters in the game, huge gods as Kratos. And so for me, I envision a bit of a deck building system that you can slowly, but as
Yeah.
across the course of the game, whether it's campaign, whether it's a few shots, however you want to define it, you can slowly build up your deck, and you can go through these branching paths of taking down multiple monsters because this is a game that begs for huge, ridiculous, over the top miniatures. And I believe we will see a board game. More specifically, I believe we will see a board game from Command for this one. And Command, Cool
Oh
Mini or
yeah.
Not, is the company I picked because if I had to guess, they followed this path with Bloodborne. They had Bloodborne the card game as a card game, and then they obviously licensed that, and then they had Bloodborne the board game, which brought them millions of dollars. And I believe we'll probably see a similar path for God of War. We had God of War the card game, and I would not be surprised if we see ridiculous, over the top, large miniatures in a game from Command that likely does not match my vision for how the game actually plays out. But I'm looking forward to if or when it ever actually happens, because God of War is excellent, and I'd love to see more from it.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, this is one I haven't played actually. But I think I would like it. I think it's the kind of game I would like. So
It's very. I mean, I played the originals 1, 2, and 3. Actually, I don't know if I played one. I think I played 2 and 3. Solid games. But 4, the most recent one, or maybe it's 1 and 2, then 3. I don't know. But whatever the most recent one, where he's running around with his son, that by far was the best system. It really upped the ante for how well the game was done. And I actually never finished it. I still have it on my PlayStation, but I need to finish it along with a few other games, including Horizon Zero Dawn, which was already made into a board game. But yeah.
yeah, yeah, nice one. Yeah, all
What's your
right.
number
So
one?
my number one is, and this is a bit disappointing in a way because, as you said, we did this list before some games were announced. So
Is
my
it?
number one is Elder Scrolls or Skyrim is okay, but I would prefer Morrowind actually. which I think is my favorite of the Elder Scrolls games. Even though Skyrim is, well, it's more streamlined, obviously. But
So,
Morrowind had this, like, Skyrim is still a somewhat basically, I think the easiest way to describe it is that in Skyrim you have different skill levels, right? And you have it for
yeah,
like short. You have basically like sword skill.
yeah,
But in Morrowind you had like short sword, a long sword, saber. You had like a bunch of different skills. So it's like, and that was for everything. You had like the big axe and the small axes and the different kinds of bows and the crossbows. So it's a bigger game. It's more streamlined in Skyrim, and I think that's why Skyrim I think was a larger hit as well.
hmm
Um, but Skyrim the board game is coming. I don't know anything about it though. They haven't really released much. Like I'm curious to see what the mechanics of the game will be. I will back it probably just because of the setting, regardless. But my idea for what I would like to see is again, huge sprawling adventure game. Maybe like deck building would be interesting in there. Like getting new cards in a way to get like new items or new when you level up, you can level up your skills and so on. But I would like to see it combined. So I would like to see like a deck builder with boards and miniatures. Something really huge for this one. And again, it's a co-op game. I have a hard time seeing this as a competitive game,
yeah.
but like solo
Do you
or
know
like
if the current campaign is a co-op or competitive? Oh, it says cooperative. It's an epic. I'm
oh
actually have on my screen. I
yeah
have the Elder Scrolls.
yeah it has to
It says an
be
epic
co-op. I
cooperative
see
board
that.
game adventure across Skyrim for 1 to 4 players, and that's all the information we currently have. Although we do have 10,710 people currently following it.
Yeah, yeah, and it's on GameFound, right? So
Yes, it is on GameFound
yeah,
by Modifius Entertainment.
it's
Yep,
gonna be very interesting. I mean,
we'll see.
I guess we will get like if I think for me it's one of these like I don't almost don't care how the game works. I just want it.
I mean, I agree. Any one of these titles I've told you, I will get my hands in it, and if I don't like it, I'll move on from it. But I am
Oh
definitely,
yeah,
yeah, it's. I mean, these are big, big games, and I'm excited that yours is being made into an actual game.
yeah. I mean, it's very mainstream. I think the only one on my list that really sticks out is Don't Starve. That I think is a bit more
Yes.
independent.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I like the mainstream stuff. I'm the same with board games. I like big, BGG top
Yeah.
100. I like
I agree.
those games.
I don't
So
disagree. And so my number one is going to be one that, like you mentioned already with another game with World of Warcraft, this one has already been made into a board game, but I want to see it done differently, and this is going to be Bioshock. Now, have you ever played Bioshock?
oh
Oh,
no, I
Bioshock
haven't.
is so good. It
Uh,
is. So there's Bioshock 2, and then they had the Infinity one, Bioshock Infinity, or whatever it was. But for me, Bioshock 1 and 2 were always the best of the series. They were so good.
this is first
So
person
it
shooter,
is a
right?
first-person shooter with powers and abilities. And
Yeah.
I still managed to include this one up here because there's again like Overwatch before, it focuses more on the world building and more on the development of your character's powers and what you can do over the first-person shooter. Even though there is first-person shooter in this, but the world is so amazing. And this for me, the publisher I picked for this one that I want to see it done by is going to be Awaken Realms by the who own GameFound
Yeah.
as well. And so I think they could do so solidly with this IP, with this world that they have. Bioshock it's one of the best worlds I've ever experienced. One of the most developed stories that I've ever played. It had twists and turns. It had me hooked into the characters and shocked when the twists were revealed in the game. And the actual gameplay backs it up from here to tomorrow with such development of how you're going to like augment your character. You're going to be shooting ice blasts, electricity, water. You're going to be doing telekinesis. There's so many different options for the powers you have in your character. Will it actually be a good board game? I mean, I imagine like its predecessor, the board game that's already made, Bioshock Infinite, or whatever it is. I imagine it's not likely to be great, but I still want to
Yeah.
see it
Have you
made.
played the Infinite
I have
game?
not. No, the ratings scared me off, and it didn't seem like
Yeah.
the kind of game system I'm interested in. Now, I'm not optimistic. The fact that the game already exists does mean that they've branched out into board games, but it also means that it probably didn't do as well as they wanted, and they're probably skeptical to see it done. Now, how do you do it well? I don't know. That's why I don't actually design board games, but I'd love to see this one made. It is one of the best board games I have ever played, and to the point that I recently downloaded it to dive back into the world. I'm too busy, so I got like a few levels in and haven't picked it up since, but I love this world. It's a solid world.
Is it some kind of robots you're playing,
Yes,
or like it's
sort
the
of. You're
yeah?
playing as a character in this underwater city, and there's these big daddies. Those are the robots you're going to be talking about, and those big daddies are protecting these little sisters or whatever they're called. I can't remember what the name is, but they're protecting these little girls who are walking around carrying Eve, the substance that powers all these powers and abilities. And so you're trying to capture and harvest the Eve, or perhaps release these girls, but these big daddies are protecting them. So every time you get up to them, you have to have this huge battle with one of these big daddies and somehow make sure you win so that you can become more powerful as a character. As along the way, there's also going to be boss fights with the actual enemies of the game. But all in all, there's a lot going on in this world. And for me, the story was incredible. And I'm not somebody who's typically pulled in by story in these games.
Okay, that sounds interesting. I I mean, this is one game that I
Mhm.
heard of, but like again, I think it comes down to a lot of again. I feel like I can't really like I play a lot of
Yeah,
both, but if I'm really into board games, I don't really have time to keep up with the whole video game
I
scene,
agree.
and especially like PlayStation these days, I can't keep up. Another game that I thought about for this list I should mention is The Witcher.
Ah,
I played
yes.
The
But they
Witcher
announced
3
it. They announced
recently,
it
and
already. So
is it
yeah, The
coming?
Witcher. You didn't know that?
What?
The,
I mean, I know Ignacy Trevicek made a
no,
Witcher
there's a
board
new
game, but
one.
that
There's a
one
new
got
one
pretty
coming.
bad. A
So
new one?
effectively, so
Okay.
I had The Witcher when we first talked about doing this video a while ago. I had The Witcher on my list, but then they announced the board game, and I was like, they announced the board game. Why are they doing that? And so I took it off the list because we already had it. But yeah, they have The Witcher coming to Kickstarter, I believe, in May.
Oh, the old
Yeah,
world.
and the
Yeah.
only
Okay.
downside, just to get the one disappointment out of the way, is it does seem to be a competitive experience, which is an interesting way to
Okay.
play it. So we'll see how that plays out. But yeah,
Yeah, it says it's 2 to 5 players, so that's like no
yep, yep.
solo.
That's basically it. So that is going to be our list of the
All right.
top 5 for each of us video games that we want to be seen made into board games. In the comments down below, let us know which you want to see. Are there any of these 10 that we had no overlap in our list? So we have 10 different games. Which of
No.
these do you most want to see turned into a board game? And which of your own would you love to see made into a board game? With what mechanics, which publisher, which anything? There's going to be more and more crossover as the years go by. That Venn diagram of board gamers and video gamers and the
Oh yeah.
possibility of these
Yeah.
multi-million-dollar Kickstarters, it's going to be something we're going to continue to see more of every single year that goes by. Rainbow Six Siege into a board game, I would never have thought to see that, but it's happening. It's happening. So we'll
Yeah.
see. In any case,
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much, Alex, for bringing me
absolutely.
on.
Thanks so much for joining, Joseph. This has been an absolute blast. Again, everyone, I'll throw a link to his channel down below, Board Games Near Us. Make sure to check that out. And until next time, I hope you enjoyed this video. And as always, have a good one.